Well, it's time now for business, starting with a quick look at the markets. And firstly, how things closed up in the US on Tuesday. Gains across the board on Wall Street, with the Nasdaq closing up almost 3.7%. The S&P 500 ending up almost 1.5%. The Dow Jones, as you can see there, closing just a little above the flat line. Well, as for Asia, a very similar picture this Wednesday. The Nikkei up almost 0.4%. The Shanghai Composite up over 0.2%. A similar picture in Hong Kong. The Kospi, meanwhile, trading just above the flat line. Well, for more, we can bring in Han Tan, market analyst at FXTM. Thanks for being with us again. Could you take us through what we're seeing on the markets right now?
Yeah, indeed. So the stock market gains that you mentioned, that you highlighted to your audience earlier, is this slight reprieve that we are seeing compared to the market action from recent weeks? So arguably the biggest item weighing on investors' minds right now is whether inflation will make a roaring comeback in the US, because you've got the Fed and the government spending trillions already to support the economic recovery. The idea is to perhaps bring inflation back. And so markets are bracing for those prospects, for that inflation overshoot. And that's why we're seeing those surging treasury yields, suppressed gold prices, the dollar supported, and coming at the expense of tech stocks.
Meanwhile, Joe Biden's huge stimulus plan is edging closer to being passed in the US Congress.
Indeed. Now, I think that most of the optimism surrounding that stimulus package has already been priced into the markets. But this could be a double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, yes, more fiscal stimulus can be seen to be positive for the U.S. economy, but it could also herald faster inflationary pressures or faster inflation. And when that happens, we could see the Fed actually tightening or hiking U.S. interest rates much earlier than expected. So that's a narrative that markets are contending with right now, hence the kind of volatility that we've seen in recent weeks.
We're halfway through the trading week. What should we be looking out for in the coming days, do you think?
Yeah, indeed. So today we've got a couple of key things. So besides the vote in the House on the fiscal stimulus plan, also I think what's key will be the February Consumer Price Index. That's the U.S. inflation. So it gives investors another chance to really assess their inflation outlook, whether it's warranted. Then looking to tomorrow, you've got the speech from the ECB Governor, Christine Lagarde. Now, no changes likely from the policy meeting, but if she tries to dampen down the rising yields, the bond yields in Europe, then we could see that reaction feed through into the currency space as well. And then to end the week on Friday, we've got U.S. consumer sentiment and producer prices. I think that also will be another key, or at least the next milestone to look out for in the overall reflation trade narrative.
Han Tan, a market analyst at FXTM, thank you very much for your insight once again. Now, as we discussed just there, President Biden's massive stimulus plan is set to be approved by the House of Representatives on Wednesday, providing a lifeline for millions of American families and businesses. The city of New York is planning to use some of the cash injection to create a taxi relief fund to help the city's cab drivers. Marius Sophos takes a look.
It's just a small chunk of the United States' $1.9 trillion stimulus package, but it will come as a relief for New York cabbies who've been thrown deeper into financial uncertainty by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Today, with stimulus funds, we're announcing the Taxi Medallion Owner Relief Fund, a new approach that will provide money directly to drivers.
The $65 million fund offers New York's yellow taxi owners a $20,000 loan to use as a down payment to restructure debts related to their permits, and up to $9,000 in debt payment support. Many drivers took out loans to purchase their permits or medallions when values were high. Since 2013, though, the value of a taxi medallion has plummeted from $1 million to $200,000, leaving thousands of owner-drivers buried in debt. Uber and other taxi apps have taken much of the blame for the crash in the medallion market, while the pandemic has further dried up their customer base.
Many medallion owners are struggling. I have heard the pain in their voices, that they have had to choose between making debt payments or providing their families with a roof over their heads and food on the table.
President Biden's stimulus plan aims to protect businesses and households across the country. The legislation includes extension of more generous unemployment benefits, sending direct stimulus checks to struggling families, as well as allocating more money for the US vaccination program.